Hey everyone, Joy Brooks with Email and Coffee. I'm talking today with Remington Whiteside. And the conversation is going to be a bit about information and misinformation and too much information. And, Remy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, will do, Joy. So my name is Remington Whiteside. I go by Remy. Just the informality piece. As I like to say, by day, I'm an active duty U.S. Army warrant officer. But by night, I tend to focus on academic writing, publications, stuff like that, doing research, mainly about language and information. But it's not limited to those topics by any means. Anything essentially ontologically related, I'll dive into. But yeah,
I love that word ontological. I really do.
it is a good word.
It
It's
seems
really
to be
underrated.
like, it's in the zeitgeist. Everyone's, everything is ontological. And the thing is, just means, existing or in
Yeah.
existence or being.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, in case, we just did we'll do grammar later. We just do vocabulary. We'll do declining and conjugating shortly. You could, because you are linguistics. There's this new concept of, there used to be the micro and the macro, and now it's like meta. But there's a lot of, these are linguistic things. There's a lot of ways we interact with information.
Yes.
Right? So, for example, when the printing press was invented, I mean, it was like, the end of the world is here. Because first of all, it took those handwritten books and turned them into a technology.
Sure.
And those expensive things that scribes had written and rewritten and written over and again, very expensive, now became something that anybody, more or less, could purchase at a bookstore.
Sure.
And that was really the beginning of the technological age. You could argue with that, but so it begins. It begins to distribute information where I get a book and you get a book and he gets a book and she gets a book and we're all reading the same book. And it's easy, more or less, to get the book. And you could, buy a book and give it to somebody else. And now we're all talking about it. And this is information. And now we're sharing the same information. Now, propaganda, on the other hand, was invented, like, I think the moment after Adam and Eve were, I think, propaganda was the snake. All right? Propaganda was the snake, because he lied. He just told stories. He told stories. He told Eve stories. And
the metaphors.
Right. So it's a good metaphor, too. It just came to me. So these are the types of things that, we take information for granted. And we occasionally have conversations with people where we use terms like, that's true. I believe that, I believe, or in my opinion. And these are all different ways of expressing information. Now, it can be used against. The military requires information. So maybe you can, I know you have, I wrote it down. So I know you have done some research into media literacy, multiliteracy, and meta-literacy.
Correct.
I wrote those things down. Maybe you could give us a little bit of explain explain what these are and how they impact us all.
Sure. So when I did my doctoral study, it was on media information data literacy fundamentals within a unique army population of information professionals. Um, Now, the findings from that study, in my opinion, are not solely limited to the military population, because, in my opinion, with some exceptions, the military is a pretty good exemplification of our society as a whole. Um, so, looking at media literacy competencies, or the fundamentals, if you will, whenever we are digesting media information, so something taking off of a medium or the media as we perceive it. And it's not limited to any one particular type of media. The term media in this case is very holistic. You can apply it to print media, you can apply it to social media, the internet. They're very flexible. But it is, how do we interact with that information? How do we take it in? How do we digest it, internalize it? And what do we do with that information? So one of the key findings with regard to the media information and data literacy is that people who tend to just dive in aren't doing the outside research. They're not doing the lateral research, the fact checking, the investigative piece to verify the information itself. A lot of it is taken at face value, which is problematic. And go into things. So one of the topics I centered on in my study was malign information. So what is malign information? It's something I also refer to as M2DP. So malinformation, misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda. So each one of those is an entirely different thought process, but again, it's very ontologically related to the idea of information. So malinformation, you can think about it as doxing. So just an unleash of information about a particular thing or person that is malicious in intent. Misinformation. So just covered malinformation. Misinformation is information that is not correct, but it is not intentionally malicious. So it is basically something that is taken out of context, twisted, just and however nature, by human nature, if you will. Or it can be something that is seeded, such as disinformation, which is something that is decisively made malign and wrong, and then it is then propagated by people who don't know the malicious nature of that information, and then they spread it, and it becomes misinformation. And then you have, of course, propaganda. We all know what propaganda is. That's a very big buzzword we've been familiar with, but that is a combination of misinformation, disinformation, usually disinformation, and perhaps even malinformation. And this is pushed out via the motive of a specialized body. So we can think of it as government. It could be a non-state actor, however you want to play it. So all of this malign information has an effect on the information ecosystem. So specifically in my study, it was the open information environment. So we're just looking at things that are like openly accessible via anyone, via smartphone, or if I go buy a newspaper. So how do you move through this information ecosystem? What are we taking into context here? What are we taking out of context? What are we looking behind? Because a lot of times language is just theater. There's a lot of smoke and mirrors. We do wordplay, and it's very much in the vein of Ludwig Wittgenstein. He's a language philosopher, early 20th century. And and then just he was very, very concerned about language as a philosophical instrument, that it is so bewitching because we just tend to, play with it. And you can do a lot with it. But when you get down to the core, language should be simple. And anywho, we all meddle with language. It is an instrument of motive. It is an instrument of influence. And it is also the defining medium for our communication. And we're not simply talking about the verbal spoken language. I mean, this could also be sign language. This could be print, any language. So, yeah, I think, went a few directions with that.
Yeah, well, the thing is, there's so much that we communicate with. So, we communicate with our body language,
Sure.
right? Now, most of us are not trained to communicate. So we're just native speakers, and we're just essentially showing our emotions through everything that we do. I mean,
Sure.
as human beings are. So, you say, hey, how are you? And the person's having a bad day, and they just tell you, my day is bleh. However, you get into business, corporate, and when somebody says, how was your day? You've got an agenda.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want anybody to know you're having a bad day.
Right.
So there's an agenda there. Now, a higher level, you've got politicians that are playing all sides. And I mean all sides.
Of course.
And they're masters at that. Or, maybe not masters, but they are, unfortunately. They're masters. This is where you think, it's human nature to tell a story. Everyone tells a story. Everything we do is about storytelling. It's human nature to do that, and therefore it's human nature to make it more interesting, or make it more grand than it is. You want to tell a boring story. You want to tell them you want everybody to be interested. You want people to laugh. So when we think about the concept of misinformation, as you mentioned it, malinformation, misinformation. Sometimes when we, our mothers used to say, don't lie, but you could tell a white lie. So sometimes when we make stories up, we're doing it innocently, and sometimes we're not.
Right.
And being complex creatures, this gets really interesting. And because now we have so many ways to get information, and everything we do is about information. You send your kids to school, and they're not they're learning not only how to read, how to write. Well, maybe they're not learning that. Maybe they're learning how to read and write. They're learning how to be social. They're learning a lot of things at school. They're given a computer, they're given a phone, they have access to all this different type of media. There's art, there's music. I mean, we're being flooded with information, where the more rural people are outside, very busy doing things. And not necessarily, the way they gain information is totally different. So if you're out on the farm and you're digging a hole, you're getting information. This is a good hole. Oh, this is bad soil. It's not going to, whatever it is. This is great for a tree, but it's not, I can't make a basement out of this, whatever. You're learning different things from your environment. They're not getting flooded with man-made information.
Sure.
It's a different type of information. So us city folk, we're getting bombarded with information. I can say that it's going to make or break us.
Sure.
It's breaking us right now.
It definitely is.
I mean,
In
we
some
don't
ways.
even we can't we can't define words anymore,
Right. So
and
the
we're afraid of being offended. We're
right, right.
oh, that's very offensive.
The manipulation and agenda from all sides is definitely coming to a pinnacle at this point. I don't think there's any one singular pinnacle it can come to. I think it's just a variety of points. Um, but that rural versus urban divide, I thought was really interesting. It's a good example. Looking at tacit information, that is information that is passed down, verbally or via experience, watching. I'm going to watch. I'm a farmer. I know all about this land because my parents taught me about the land. I'm going to teach my children about the land. Because I'm not going to sit there and just Google what about this land do I need to know? How do I dig a hole? It's just something that's passed via generations. It's tacit knowledge. Um, and in many cases, that tacit knowledge system has been lost on the urban side, kind of lost amongst the skill sets, if you will. Um, it's generalized as we think about it. I mean, we still have plenty of trades that exist within the city that you probably won't see in an urban area. It's just a different evolution, no better, no less. But you have that academic or even quasi-academic stature amongst the urban people who are, in my opinion, absolutely overloaded with information. I mean, your day is driven by the media around you. And then chances are, if you're working, you're synthesizing a lot of that information on someone's behalf. So it's going to be your job to kind of wade through that noise, that information, make sense of it. But yes, I mean, absolutely agree. Information overload is a thing. That hyperconnectivity with these smart devices, you have access everywhere. My fridge, theoretically has Bluetooth. Not mine, actually. I have a very low tech fridge, and I'm very proud of it.
My
Um,
friend's fridge wanted to talk to my telephone when I went to visit her the other day.
don't you love it?
They were both, two Samsungs. They were like, "Yo, I'm over here. Whoa, cuz." Like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's just that hyperconnectedness.
Yes.
And that really that cybernetics, that connection of systems, and everything is in within a feedback loop, constant giving information. How your cell phone works, it's how every piece of technology, digital technology around you works nowadays. We've definitely moved away from a lot of analog, so you're not having that analog response. It's all digital, constant pinging, if you will. Um, but even moving into the social medium that is social media, so that internet driven um, social aspect. I mean, that is you're constantly trying to get that elicit feedback via responses, conversations, etc. I don't think our brains are quite wired enough to process it all. I think that's. I think we're in a phase of expedited evolution, and that's just my personal opinion talking. There's some research that supports that, and there's some that doesn't. But I think that there's some maladaptivity there that we're not quite getting it. And then how do you navigate that? Because it's not going to get any easier. That's the problem. So
No.
you have things like AI that can one filter the noise, and AI is that hashtag AI. There's a lot that goes within AI. I don't feel like there's a need to break into it, but just that overarching concept of AI that yes, it can filter a lot of that noise, but at the same time, it can produce a lot of that noise. So the going back to the stories, the days of stories have always been about making meaning out of the information that's given to you. Um, you see something in the wild and you turn it into a story, and then over time gets told enough, becomes part of the identity of the culture, within the sociological piece. So we still have a lot of these atavistic um, legacy features within our body, because the technological revolution, I'm talking like the most rudimentary piece of technology, only goes back about, realistically, 5,000 years. Probably a little bit longer. Some anthropologists might get mad at that, but I mean, we're talking about less than 10,000 years. But Homo sapiens have been around for at least 200,000 years. So we have all of these atavistic traits that are still lingering within our bodies, within our minds, within the conscious space. And how do we utilize that? How do we turn that into something in the 21st century? And I don't think we truly have a choice in the matter. I think it's mostly the subconscious kind of acting out. Very, very interesting thoughts have been proposed about that, with the, talk about schizophrenia, autism, being like, these maladies, if you will, these conditions, are almost a response of the primitive body within a modern setting. And then you can only, and this was, early 20th, mid 20th century coming out with these thoughts. But now we have the 21st century here, and digital technology is just continually ramping up. So how do we respond to that as, something that is biologically not too far off from a hunter-gatherer? So very interesting proposals.
What comes to mind, something I've been talking with other people about, is that the theories that the mind is more of a receiver and is parsing or filtering reality. So whatever is around us is a lot brighter, thicker, smellier. It's filled.
Sure.
Our environment is filled, stocked to the hilt.
Yeah.
We perceive this much.
Sure.
And our brain is basically saying, I need to survive. I don't blow my head off. I need to eat. I need to sleep.
Yeah.
Need something warm. And, after that, it's a party.
Yeah.
So as we attempt to, first of all, understand consciousness and understand what that is, and then we take a look at all those maladies like schizophrenia, autism. Are we talking about people that have sense perceptions, the ability to parse data out, the filter? Are their brains different than ours? Are they seeing more? Are they seeing less? Are they, attempting to understand more than more than we can see, and therefore, boom.
Right.
These types of things, and once we say to ourselves, okay, there's more than meets the eye here. Literally, quite literally, there's more than meets the eye. So there's more going on around me than I can ever perceive. That's when you slowly start, you don't trust yourself so much, because you're thinking, not only is someone lying to me, but my brain is lying to me just to keep me alive.
Sure. Yeah. Survival mechanisms, for sure. And it goes back to Maslow's hierarchy. So, the most basic things is what we're looking out for. It's, how do you adapt to that kind of world? Then, we're no longer looking for that giant cat out in the forest. Well, in most cases, depending on where you live. But yeah, so the figurative cat in the woods, we're no longer scared of that. But yeah, how is that re-engineered essentially to work in the modern 21st century environment? It is difficult. Our brains are used to processing a lot of information, filtering out, as you say, a lot of information. It is absolutely fascinating that what really is out there when you take away all of the filters. I don't think our brains could really handle all that noise. That is a lot.
Yeah.
And I think in a
We,
lot of
we,
ways, we see that with, for those on the autism spectrum, it varies from very high level or high functioning to very lower functioning. So, that feedback mechanism in response to data, information. So sensory overload. You see it, too much noise, they shut down. Too much light, they shut down. Whereas in some cases, you feed them spreadsheets of numbers and they thrive. Where most people would probably shut down.
yeah,
Can't handle it.
exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
so, and then what was that original design for? I think is genetic, the genetic aspect of that. It's been carried on for so long. We tend to lose certain traits over time that we no longer need them. So, lose the tail. But then you have some maladaptive feedback over time. Some people have biological issues with that, physical issues. Um, but it is, when you look at it, we take a step back and look at the holistic macro timeline. That it's just a constant pinging of, all right, so this didn't work, let's go back and try this until it works over the evolutionary period. When we tend to look at things in space and time, we're looking at a very micro kind of view. How what is it going to look like? When we have so much information overload, we're going to probably need a better brain capacity to organically handle more data, and navigate that type of ecosystem. Can't just solely rely on AI, but right now we have this intrinsic fear of AI, because we don't understand AI. But who's not to say that in the probably not too distant future, um, likely people on the spectrum are going to have a better advantage on essentially working with AI than your average traditional person.
I'm already best friends with Claude, so
No, yeah, yeah.
What I was thinking, um, and I mean best friends. Um, when when as individuals, and we're all trying to, on our very micro level, attempting to survive the day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when it comes down to wake up, what's up? Can I make it to the end of the day? That would be a good thing. So we're just trying to survive, and then we've got macro on top of us, essentially trying to deconstruct that. Like, how
Mm-hmm.
can we mess this person up? And
Yeah.
for any number of reasons. Revenge. I need to get ahead. I want what they have. Any amount of reasons. Any amount of reasons. And then we take that picture and we put it into the military. Now, the institution of military is complex in itself, because it used to be just mustering up the able-bodied men and
Right.
some women to make sure that the city was defended against something, and then everybody go back to work. Right, go back to what you were doing. Thank you very much. You get a medal. Sorry, you lost your foot. Now it's become a career.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So it gets, it takes on, it's just like the government. Government, when it's at its most simplistic level, the government is supposed to secure the nation.
Sure.
And to organize a constitution and
Hopefully.
the judicial construction that holds the Constitution together, and essentially that. the military arm of it is supposed to defend thereof, but it becomes a career. So, my father was a politician, and I'm going to be a politician. And the same way, my father was in the army, I'm in the army. So now it becomes
Sure.
this career thing, which is an onion skin of things. So we're talking about first defense, but then intelligence. And the type of intelligence that scares the bejesus out of people.
Sure.
Because the things, the CIA, when they say, 007, he had what they say, he had a ticket to kill people. What was the expression?
I don't know.
I can't remember, but what was he? He was an assassin.
Sure.
007 was a spy. He was an assassin. Worked for the government.
Yeah.
And that's just a story. No, it's not.
Right.
No, it's not. It's not a story. It's a general story about people in the military, especially during World War II.
Sure.
License to kill. License to kill. That was 007, License to Kill.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, the military now is definitely a vastly more professionalized occupation than it was in recent memory. Go back, 200-300 years. And yeah, like I said, it was just a bunch of peasants taking up arms to defend whatever. Yeah, I mean, you did have some professionalized forces then. They go back thousands of years, but now for the most part, it is a professional force. It is something you do for the career. You have, a specific pathway you do in the military, regardless of country. So even something like intelligence, a lot of Americans, I think Westerners as a whole, do have this ingrained fear of intelligence professionals in a military capacity, especially Americans, due to not too recently, or actually not too distantly, mostly recent, go back a couple of decades, you had some rights abuses from the government. You look at things like Watergate, freedoms, liberties violated, shouldn't have happened. So I do think there's the fear, even going back to September 11th, the Patriot Act, the dialogue around that was, a lot of people felt that they were very, that their liberties were again violated. The potential for, eavesdropping on their lives. A lot of it was taken out of context, but they didn't know any better because, one, the information around these themes gets propagated by these news agencies, which they say they're objective. They're not always are. They're not always the most informed, because at the end of the day, viewers equal funds. So, and again, it just plays into the motive piece. That was something really good about Noam Chomsky. He is a fantastic linguist, and his political views have definitely intensified over time. But he basically co-authored a propaganda model with Herman. I can't remember his first name, but the Herman Chomsky propaganda model, and that's one of the things is you take something from the scope of the open information environment, something that's coming out of media. Whatever theme or narrative they're spewing out, and then you deconstruct. So, okay, what are they talking about? Why are they talking about it? Cool. All right, so let's look at the news production. Let's call it XYZ News. And so they're the ones flaming this information. So, one, who's funding this news corporation? What's the skew on it? Is it left, right? Is it center? Do they say they're objective? Are they not? So you're entirely decomposing basically from birth to death, the whole cycle of, because you can't just look at the information. You have to look at the sources it comes from and who's paying those sources, because it's always about money, motive, and influence at the end of the day, always. So, yeah, definitely a worthwhile read looking at that. And then, I don't blame Chomsky for having some pretty intense views on some things, but I think overall he's hitting the nail on the head, because you cannot realistically trust any information out there. And then nowadays we have that new variable of AI. So a lot of young adults, children, even adults are relying on AI, which is cool. Like, AI is awesome if you know how to use it, but you cannot inherently trust everything it says. I use it quite a bit because it's fun. Actually had some, I'm not going to say which platform, but I had one of my AI platforms I use generate a research paper for me on a particular topic that I'm very familiar with. So I asked it to produce me a 3,000 word research paper, not really a research paper, more of a research essay, with sources, APA format, APA 7 format. And of course, it produces it for me in 20 seconds. So, of course, that's an issue for universities, right? But I went ahead and fact checked it, looked at these sources, and it gave me 7 sources. 6 of those sources, they were legitimate sources. That 7th source was entirely fabricated, from author to the title of the work to the title of the book. So it hallucinated. It just came up with something, which, if you're not familiar with the idea of hallucination, that's just AI bullshitting. And bullshitting being the technical term. So it's just, anyone else would BS an answer. The AI is doing the same thing, because that's, it's made in our image, right? So that is the original sin given down to AI, is that we basically push down a bias, because we don't know any better. We don't know how to be truly objective about anything we do. There's always that layer of bias there. So there's a ton of ethical, legal, and moral implications with this. It's something, it was one thing prior to 2015, because I'd say 2015 is pretty much the defining year of the rise of AI as we know it. So, and by AI, we're talking about narrow artificial intelligence, not general artificial intelligence, where it hits the singularity, where it becomes the general AI, where it's, the AI of science fiction, if you will. That sort of trope. But no, it's still very narrowly defined on scope and what it does. And but yeah, so we still have to verify information no matter what. No amount of technology that we have is going to be producing or promoting something that is truly objective. It is always following some level of bias or influence, whether that's intentionalized or not. In the case of disinformation, where it's intentionally turned malicious, or misinformation, where someone's just sharing something they thought was cool or not cool, or just they thought it was interesting, but it turns out to be, it could be a hoax. And then that falls in the realm of misinformation.
The other day, well, it was yesterday, I was listening to a podcast, and this is something that I've seen recently, and this is something that has repeated itself recently. And it's not meant to be necessarily so much of a religious statement as it is something that I've recognized, that I've seen lately. So the podcaster's talking, and he's talking about Noah and the flood. And he mentions it as specifically a Christian thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like Noah, and the Christian flood. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Noah was not a Christian.
No, he was
and
not.
I realized I have to think to myself, okay, what has happened is, in many religious groups, is that and this is not necessarily meant to be a slight, but it is something that happened linear from the after Christ, is that at some point in time, philosophers and apologists and religious people replaced the Hebrew Bible with the Christian Bible.
Sure.
And in telling stories, all of the stories became, and Abraham, the Christian Abraham is like, what? Right? And and I've seen it play out a number of times on different conversations where it's clearly, this is in the Christian Bible, and I'm like, oh, okay, there was time before and after. Remember all the time before? Remember that time? And that's religious propaganda.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. Very much so.
What I'm getting at, and I'm not pinning my pointing my finger. I'm merely saying the concept of believe me, trust me. I'm here to protect you,
mm-hmm.
and it's for your good, etc., etc. We believe those things without even asking a question.
Mm-hmm.
When your father and your mother begin to tell you things, you believe them. You don't even second guess. And they're also giving you propaganda because they want you to do specific things. There's an agenda behind what they're telling you.
Right.
I'm not saying that your parents just don't tell you stuff, and every time they say something, they're trying to, manufacture something. I'm merely saying that everybody has an agenda. They're all trying to, first of all, we all want everyone to like us.
Right. And it's interesting. So going back to that religious aspect of influence, again, that's definitely not just a religious thing. That is a societal aspect. So take religious, social, economic, ethnic, linguistic, political, however far you want to break it down, it is there. But yeah, so that going into propaganda, that is why propaganda is effective, because it's not just propaganda isn't just a lie or a half truth or whatever you want to call it. It has to come from a unified sort of body. So because you can't just be a lone wolf out there pushing propaganda on your behalf, because what do you represent? So it has to come from some sort of body, and it doesn't have to be political, it doesn't have to be religious, but it has to be representing something en masse. So some sort of entity en masse. But it has to have a layer of, well, obviously influence. It has to seem almost official. So that's why going to the parents. So the parents represent the unity of the household. So the parents are going to sit there and lie, doing whatever manipulation, if you will. It is coming from an officialized source, and they're pushing that information down. So you don't have you're like, oh yeah, why wouldn't I believe that? And a lot of these, take for instance, these news broadcasters, these corporations, they are officialized sources. They are speaking on someone's behalf. Now, most people are thinking, oh, well, it's a news organization. So automatic, well, aside from Fox News, right? Because that's a pretty common narrative now. Go back 20 years, a little bit different. But now we all know that Fox News is extremely biased.
CBS. It used to be CBS.
Yeah.
Everyone trusted CBS.
But yeah, now it's, we know Fox News is biased. But it's another big media pusher. And of course they're objective. Why wouldn't they be? Well, of course not, because objectivity gets you nowhere. So they're going to push their own.
But it's just what it is. What is it that they're trying to do that really kills me? Because is it just confusion? we're going to end up talking about UFOs in a minute, but is it just out and out confusion? They just want us going, I don't know. Do they want us to think this particular way? Like, what is it that they're trying to do? Because it's confusion that they're generating.
Well, right. So, the hard answer is it depends. So sometimes it is just a distraction measure. Because one, you have to go back, like Chomsky and Herman said, look at who's paying these media organizations, who's really owning those airwaves of that internet space, if you will. So who is paying those bills? Who is doing all that design before it even hits that news organization? So there's always motive there, and you have to really trace the root of the source. Ultimately, who's funding the entire operation? Because that's going to give you some key indications. It's kind of breaking it down. Decomposition again. And yeah, so it's, but going back to the propaganda piece, that is, so an officialized source, and it has to have some layer of authority to it. So believable, right? So again, which I'm not going to say that there haven't been in the past any officialized organization that said the sun is purple and everyone believes it. So it has to have a kernel of believability to it too. Like even it has to somewhat make sense, and that also goes into the line of conspiracy theories, because you get some outrageous ones out there, but a lot of them have a kernel of truth. Like look at QAnon. Like if you don't know, you don't know, but you're like, well, it sounds believable. The whole story, like, yeah, absolutely. Like this guy could totally be an insider and doing all this stuff. Like, it's the believability aspect. So yeah, I'd say those that's the trinity of propaganda and really conspiracy theories is officiality, and believability and authoritarian aspect. But the authority aspect, I should say, not authoritarian. That comes after everyone gets controlled.
Right. Well, the point is that the agenda? Because it just, something, and there we have the conspiracy. Everything comes down to control. But, I think to some extent, it's somewhat true. We're all trying to control our environment. And if you say that, oh, that's not true, I don't want to do that. Excuse me. Yes, you do. Yep. What do you want for breakfast? From the beginning, I don't want that. You're trying to control what's going on. From the moment you wake up, you want to control as much as you possibly can in your environment. Maybe you're a simple person and you want eggs and you don't want cereal. But the point of the matter is you want to be in control of your environment. So, is it all about the deep state in control? Sometimes I say yeah. Sometimes I say absolutely. Absolutely. And it's always been about some deep state or another.
Right. The control of sentiment, control of narrative. Honestly, a lot of it boils down to economics and finances. Because you get these giant corporations that, again, I'm going to keep their money in. That flow coming in. So, promote.
It comes, it literally comes down to the world. Marketing at some point in time moved out of from Fifth Avenue and went down to Washington, D.C. And it's all about marketing. Like, here's what we're going to do. How can we market it? How can we spin it? Because this is what we're going to do. We want them to pick it. We want them to think that's what they decided to do. But this is what we're doing. So let's sell it. And it was always there. Again, that's apparently the definition of propaganda. But we're also aware that propaganda is around us. That all of us will say, well, that's propaganda. I'm telling you the truth. No. That's propaganda. I'm telling. No. They're both bullshit. No one knows the truth. And that's where I'm at. I'm like, no one knows the truth. Do I know for a fact what happened, at Watergate with Richard Nixon? I've heard that he actually just said, "Oh, you know what? I give up." Like he could have fought it, but he gave up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm
I think
like,
a lot of
"Oh, tell me
ways
about that story."
the alien UFO idea of
hmm
visitation, when you're
hmm
talking disclosure,
Right.
that we have gone full circle a few times over the course of what, going on 70, 80 years now,
hmm
uh, that it happened, it didn't happen, it happened, it didn't happen. There was a known government disinformation campaign to say it didn't happen, and the people who said it happened, they're discredited. But now we're back to there's something going on. So I think over time, people have been so cognitively disarrayed, so much cognitive dissonance on the subject. Like you said, they think it's all BS. Doesn't matter. It's all propaganda.
It's all
We
propaganda.
live in a simulation. So,
I'm fascinated by the subject because I told you we were going to end up talking about UFOs. I'm
oh yeah,
fascinated by the subject because it actually does encapsulate a lot of things that have always been happening, that are
yeah,
happening,
sure,
and tells the story of how to normalize it,
yeah,
or how to ignore it, or how
hmm,
to control it. And I'm thinking, I don't know if there are aliens, but we've been telling stories about it forever.
sure, sure,
And everything we attempt to do is normalize ourselves, create an other,
hmm,
and make a pathway between. So either we are in peace with the other, or we are at war with the other.
sure,
Is the other good or bad? And we are here in our little bubble called the blue marble in space, and there's everything out there. I mean, you could talk about it by being just your little community and a football game, and two teams to come together, and they're playing a game. The
yeah,
other versus the home team, or little blue marble in space, and everything around us. It's the same
sure,
story over and over again, told different ways, but today with so much, I mean, it amazes me the level of distraction.
hmm,
It's become a circus. The
yeah,
level of distraction over disclosure amazes me.
hmm.
The
Theater,
it is theater.
theater by language.
And speaking of theater, the age of disclosure is coming out soon. It's theater, and how much of it is true?
Right.
How much of it is true?
The the easy answer is we'll probably never know.
Right.
I think that the harder answer really, really gets into the ontology of being. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Going off the subject of UFOs and really going into paranormality as a whole. Um,
Right.
the I think we've all seen whether it's Bigfoot, aliens, ghosts, hauntings, stuff like that. That over the past probably 20, 25 years, we've been so exposed to these ghost hunters, the hunters, if you will. Like we got to find
Mm-hmm.
evidence. And that, to me, as I get older, I feel like that's missing the point. Um, I think it's the way we approach a lot of these topics. Is the experience of the journey is really what's telling us about ourselves. Kind of a meta evaluation, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, that doesn't matter if ghosts or aliens are real overall. Like unless we're invaded tomorrow by aliens, like it's really nothing's really going to change. Um, but I think it's just how we navigate that information from a hypothetical standpoint. You know, what it tells us about ourselves, what it tells us about how we treat each other. I think there's a lot of analogy, there's a lot of metaphor there, um, a lot of narrative evaluation. Um, but I think a lot of it, honestly, is deals at it from a what we call spectrality and ontological aspect of it's a lot of our a lot of past haunts, haunting in a very loose sense. A lot of things that have occurred in the past are coming back to haunt us.
Mhm.
You know, not figuratively haunt. Uh, you know, the thematic haunting, if you will. It's just our cognitive psychological play going on there, and as we saw during the Cold War, there was a huge rise spike in and one UFO observations. But when you look at sci-fi, that was sci-fi exploded at that point in time. Oh, you're getting digitized over there.
What is it with cameras and? Oh, now we can't access your camera. Okay, so I think I'm having a haunting.
Oh yeah,
I think I'm having a haunting.
manifestation. Huh?
All right, wait, hold on 1 second. Pull it out. Oh, it doesn't really. Pull it out and put it in. And then, oh my goodness. Maybe it's my card. Well, this is a podcast now. A real podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll just device struck. Wait a minute. The note is device struggling to record. Struggling. USB device not recognized. Struggling. It literally says device struggling. Struggling. What should I do? What should you do? What do you think you should do? In any case, I guess the powers that be are telling us to wind it down. But
Right.
it is, you were saying that it's a metaphysical journey.
Yeah.
And what is above, as above is below. I mean, it's what I do in my little teeny world can be multiplied out and is occurring everywhere. So when I wake up in the morning and I'm deciding what clothes to wear, and I'm like, well, you know what, red really looks good on me. It's because I want people to like me. Otherwise, I would put on my husband's clothes and I wouldn't care to walk outside, I wouldn't even, brush my hair or do anything. And by the way, I do sometimes, I like I like to wear my late husband's t-shirts to bed. It's very comforting. But
Sure.
be that as it may, we all are navigating the small and the big at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And when it gets big, it gets very complex.
Sure.
And it only behooves us to think critically, very critically. Yes, sometimes we just want to take it we want to take it for granted. You just said it's 7:00. I believe you. It's 7:00. Why would you lie about time? Why? Right? So we just want to believe what people tell us. But sometimes we need to be critical. And I cannot imagine the I cannot imagine how the military handles all of this. Because first,
one day at a
it's
time.
an authoritarian system where here are your orders, go and do them. Here's your information, read it, go do what you've got to do. In the meantime, the best agents have to think through highly, again, complex situations where I know what my orders are, but I can't do that. That's not the way the system works. Not the way the system works. So, as we get higher up in the food chain of intelligence, it gets really, conspiracies galore. It gets really complex.
Mm-hmm.
Who's behind it? Why do you think they want this to be this way? Well, you have you'll have in the military 2 different camps in the military. I mean, think about how we entered World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And how many stories that creates. And the stories, again, Watergate stories or JFK. I mean, we've got all of these stories. We do not know the truth. You can't handle the truth. And it's true. To some extent, we can't.
Truth, such a nebulous topic.
Right? Man, oh man, I could go on, but I don't have a camera. And you don't know if I'm like, pointing at you, if I've fallen on the floor and I can't get up. I could have, but I haven't. I'm good. Well, I'm all good here. That's why I keep talking. I want people to know I'm all good here. Aside from the ghosts that have gotten into my system and have absconded with every camera that I have in my house. Where can people find you on the internet?
So I maintain a pretty steady LinkedIn presence.
Okay.
So just look up
I'll put that
Remy
down below.
Whiteside.
And I'm pointing down below, but go ahead.
Yeah, Remy Whiteside, and you can access all my stuff.
Okay.
And
it will be down below. I thank you for your patience in getting my camera, having a camera, and losing my camera.
Twice.
And too funny. Rebooting my machine 4 times. Literally. I meant that. Have a lovely evening. Anything else you want to tell my audience, who does have cameras?
Well, it's been a pleasure, Joy. Thank you for hosting me, and always love our talks. And I look forward to chatting again, hopefully in the not too distant future. And then, anyone else, always open to conversation.
Okay, cool. Maybe the next time there's a no, I was going to say a camera to be had. Maybe we'll look forward to catching up next year in the year 2026.
Oh, sounds perfect.
All right then.
All right.
Well, that's a wrap. Although it wrapped up a long time ago. the camera wrapped it up a long time ago. Thanks again, and that's a wrap. So.